So, good evening, everyone. We have a bunch of people that we see here today, and thank you so much for taking out time on a Friday evening to join us uh, for this session. Welcome to the webinar on how to build a hybrid cloud strategy, which is being hosted by Denave. I'm Shubhra Sinha, your host for this webinar. And when I'm not hosting webinars, in my other role, I also take care of the marketing function at Denave, where I do a couple of interesting stuff. Um, and it's amazing to be talking to an amazing set of audience today. I'm sure you guys are very interested in this topic, as well as you have certain expectations that you have come in today with in terms of deconstructing this entire hybrid cloud strategy. And to make this very knowledge powering and very meaningful for you, we just have the right speaker for you today. So allow me to introduce our industry veteran, who is also our speaker for today, Mr. Manindra Mukherjee. He's the National Business Development Manager HCI at Lenovo. I would request him to kindly turn on his camera and say a quick hello to our audience here. You're on mute, Manindra.
Hi, everybody. Good evening and welcome to this webinar.
Yeah, I think lately this has been the trending line. You're on mute. Sorry, I was on mute.
Yep.
So, so very nice. And so just to give him a quick introduction, he is a sales professional with more than 16 years of experience in account management, business development, field sales, pricing, channel and ISV management, market positioning and revenue mix. My God, that's whole lot. He's currently responsible for defining and executing the go-to-market strategy and relevant sales plays to meet revenue and profit goals for Lenovo's software-defined infrastructure offering across India. So that's a very impressive profile, Manindra, and we are so happy to have you as a speaker for this session.
I'm equally glad to be a part of this session, and over the next 1 hour, I think we'll have a lot of exchange of ideas and information. So, I'm looking forward to this session.
Wonderful. So are we. And so before we jump on to the main agenda, allow me to also introduce the company that I represent. That's very close to my heart. So Denave is a global sales enablement organization that's been in business for over 21 years now. And what we have been doing all these years is to get the buyer and the seller ecosystem together to make sure that sales happen, to make sure that the economies grow, so that there is more and more purchase happening, and the entire ecosystem is overall growing. Obviously, with the changing times, with the pandemic and everything, so there have been certain accelerators that have been put into place where remote selling, cloud transition, digital automation, analytics, they've just come to the forefront. They've always been, but there has also been a forced thrust to get them in the forefront and make sure that our entire messaging, also our entire service line, is in line with what businesses need today. So I will not delve deeper into who we are, though I would love to. I can take this 1 hour totally talking about Denave, because that's how close I am to this subject. I understand the agenda that we are here for today. And so jumping on from one important topic to the next in terms of the platform. So Zoom is a pretty friendly platform, and I'm sure in the last 6-7 months, most of us have attended enough birthday parties and anniversary parties on Zoom. So we all know how to use it. But for those of you who are new and who haven't used the platform before, for them, let me just take a couple of seconds to introduce the platform to you and how you can have a much more interactive experience. So, so my team has given me some pointers. Let me just call them out. So through the discussion, if you have any questions, there is a Q&A button on your panel that you'll see. You can post your question right there, and somebody from the team will attend to it. Or if we cannot, if it needs a certain kind of intervention, then we will park it for the Q&A slot, and Mr. Manindra will take it up right there. And of course, there is a chat section too. So in case, there's anything that you want to bring up in the chat section, that's again a place you can put up your queries. There is a hand raise button. So if you want to ask something, you don't want to type it, please press that hand raise button. And when we reach the designated Q&A slots, we will take the questions. We will unmute you. We will ask you to put up your question forth. But we do encourage that while, you can use hand raise, but just in the interest of time, please do put down your question so that, the team can collate it and we can best utilize this 1 hour that we have, because it's best to address as many questions so that it's a well-rounded discussion that happens. The entire webinar is being live streamed on Denave's Facebook page. It will also be uploaded on Denave's YouTube channel. So, if you want to access it anytime later, or if you want to share it with your peers, you're more than welcome to do that. And right after this webinar, you will also get the link shared with you. So it will land in your inbox for sure. Without further ado, I will now take a back seat, and I would request Mr. Manindra to kindly take this hot seat and start the designated agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Shubhra. Good evening again, and a very warm welcome. Appreciate your time, and the idea of this webinar is obviously to share our bit of experience. I hope that the screen is visible to everybody, right? Shubhra, if you can confirm, it's a full screen.
Yes, all well. I will jump in if there is an issue.
Sure. Thanks a lot. The idea is obviously in course of next 40-45 minutes, so what we would be definitely trying to do is share our experience and our customer stories that we have heard in the last 6 months. And obviously in the last 6 months, there has been a lot of change in the way we do business. This pandemic has impacted our professional and personal life. And as Shubhra mentioned, there are a few common terms which we never used to use before, which have become sort of prevalent now. So hybrid cloud is something which, again, a lot of customers, a lot of business organizations have started talking about. The problem is that while it is easy to sort of jump into a hybrid cloud bandwagon, it's always difficult to find the right balance between what the current business organization is in terms of their data center and digital transformation journey, and where it wants to be when it embarks on a hybrid cloud journey. And there are multiple factors and business outcomes that organizations across different industry verticals would plan to adopt as they embark on this hybrid cloud journey. So the idea of this session is basically to share our experience, give some insight into what is the right mix, how do you plan your hybrid cloud strategy, what are the challenges that customers might face while deep diving onto this hybrid cloud strategy. Without further ado, let's jump into the session straight away. So what's a hybrid cloud? I think we have heard this term multiple times. We have heard this from analysts, we have heard this from customers, we have heard this from cloud service providers, we have heard this from a lot of software and hardware OEMs. Okay. We'll spend some 2 minutes discussing what exactly hybrid cloud is, because there's a lot of, I would say, misinterpretation around this term hybrid cloud. So as one of the prominent analysts in this field, Forrester Research says that it's the most undescriptive term in the entire world. Reason being, multiple people, be it customers, OEM, software vendors, cloud service providers, they have interpreted this hybrid cloud in the way which is most suitable to them, right? And after, I think, multiple iteration, below are the 3 points which I could figure out is most relevant in today's world, in modern workplace. And what are those 3? First, it's a combination of public and private cloud. That's pretty clear, right? That's what hybrid means, basically. It's a combination and a mix and match of your public and private cloud instances. The second point is more important and of interest to customers and business organizations who plan to move to a hybrid cloud. It's about moving workloads seamlessly between public and private cloud platforms. I think that's what makes the difference between a hybrid cloud. It's basically a bridge that you create between your public and private cloud. And last but not the least, it's about creating an environment. It's about creating an automation and an orchestration platform that ensures that instances and services that you're hosting, irrespective of their location, it could be on-premise, private cloud, public cloud, multi-cloud, are able to talk to each other, allowing sharing of data and application in a non-disruptive manner. So these are the three, I would say, more or less standard industry definitions that are now being slowly accepted across customers, software vendors, cloud service providers, and OEMs. Now, why do you think that enterprise need a hybrid cloud strategy? While there are multiple reasons, what we have understood speaking to a lot of customers, working closely with them, is that primarily most business organizations are looking for 4 important aspects. First is agility. And when we talk about agility, what does that mean? If you look at the modern workplace today, or the way disruptions happen, most of the business organizations want to be ahead of their competition. And they do see agility playing a very, very important part in their overall journey to be ahead of the competition. In case they are not nimble and not agile, chances are that these organizations would possibly be out of business in the next 4 to 5 years. Why? Imagine, the likes of an Uber or a Facebook, who were not even in the existence a decade ago, right? Imagine a company like Kodak, who used to rule the roost in the early 70s, 80s, when digital revolution of camera was not there. Or imagine a company like Nokia, which had a monopoly business in 90s and early 2000s. But with the advent of iPhone, everything changed. So there was a disruption, and the disruptions have started happening more often than not. So every business organization wants to be agile and nimble in the business. And as we all know, information technology, or IT as we say, plays a very, very important role to bring in agility. So agility is obviously one of the important reasons why people would want to adopt a hybrid cloud strategy. Second is control. Multiple business organizations initially, when public cloud came in, thought that it's an answer to every problem in the world that they have with their current data center, which actually was not true. If you move everything to public cloud, you lose control of your data, you lose control of your application. If you recall what I said, there has to be a balance that needs to be created between agility, control, security. Right? So the customers actually would want to have a balance. They don't want to lose complete control of data and application by moving everything to public cloud, while at the same time, they would also want to have the level of agility and flexibility that cloud brings in. Third, automation. This is nothing new to business organization. I think with evolution of information technology, with evolution of multiple other aspects of business outcome through artificial intelligence, machine learning, analytics, we are trying to bring in a lot of automation in the process so that human intervention and human errors are less. With hybrid cloud, you take automation to the next level. Excuse me. And finally, cost. I think end of the day, it all boils down to cost. I guess every other person attending this webinar at some other point of time would have been asked by the management on what cost optimizations are we looking at. Is there any ways and means to deliver better business outcome, to deliver a total, lower total cost of ownership, deliver better return on investment? And that's where hybrid cloud plays a lot of importance in optimizing cost. What are the instances that you need to move on to public cloud. What are those instances that should be hosted on-premise on a private cloud? And you get the best price to performance ratio. Let's move to the next slide. We'll talk about a bit of the evolution on how this, I would say, concept of hybrid
Hi,
cloud.
Manindra. Sorry, just stepping in here. Do you, at this point of time, want to introduce a poll to our audience?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sorry. I think I missed that out. Thanks for interrupting me. Yeah,
No
Shubhra.
problem.
Yeah.
So as the host for today, that's my job, and I don't think there are any sorries required. So Manindra had a thought here, and I think he has too much in his mind to cover. But of course, there is a poll question that we have put together in terms of getting a little insight from the people who've joined us today. So I will just be launching the question right away, and you should be able to see it on your screen. So I'll also read out the question for the benefit of people who joined us on social media or who will be accessing the recording later, because they'll not be able to see this question there. The question is: rank in order of your preference when defining your hybrid cloud strategy. Now, there are 4 options there. The 4 pointers that Manindra just spoke about, which is agility, automation, cost, and control. We've put them in different orders, whether agility is the most important, or control is the most important, or automation, or cost. I think that's a very, very interesting insight that we are getting. I encourage everyone to kindly vote so that we are able to get a sense of the audience sentiment here. And so that also Manindra's talk point, I think, can be focused accordingly in terms of what the requirement is. So I see, okay, about 40% people have voted. All right, we'll give it another 10 seconds and then we'll move on to the next section. Yep. It's going very balanced. The voting, and I'll share the results shortly with everyone. All right. Okay, so I'm ending the poll now. Okay, Manindra, you should be able to see the results on your screen now.
Yeah, yeah,
Are you surprised? Not surprised?
Not surprised. I was expecting, because what I strongly believe is that every customer is different, and so would be their needs and importance to particular I would say attributes in defining their hybrid cloud strategy. And that is what exactly is the reflection of this poll. So while we understand that 12 so a majority of them would want to factor in cost as the most important attribute while defining their hybrid cloud strategy, I guess agility is something which is not far behind. And I think, as I said, every customer organization across vertical is different, and so are their strategies. So absolutely in line with what I thought.
Okay, so for the benefit of the people who joined us on live streaming, the response is maximum for cost is higher than is greater than control, is greater than agility, and then automation, and then it is very closely followed by actually agility being the most important here. So that's what the poll results say, and I think it's been very interesting. Manindra, over to you. Sorry for interrupting there.
Not a problem. Thanks. Yeah. So going back to our session, we'll spend some time on the evolution of hybrid cloud, because we need to understand, as I told you before, that over the past decade, I guess, the workplace has changed, and what we call today the modern workplace, it's quite different from the way we operated way back in, let's say, 2000 and early 2000. So I joined this industry roughly around 2003 2004, and I've seen a complete transformation on how this industry operates. So we'll spend some time on how hybrid cloud has played an important role in transforming this industry and has been an important part of every customer's digital transformation journey. Okay, right. So the first and foremost, I think way back in the starting of the 2010, most of the business organizations, customers were owning the data center. So there was a sort of, I would say, ownership which was there with every business organization to own and have responsibilities of running day-to-day operation of their applications, resource, database, hardware, software, which was there in the data center. Right now, what's happened is we have moved from owning to consuming. Right now, if you talk to a customer, the conversation has changed completely. We don't get into the speeds and fees of how many how many cores are required, how much memory is required, or how much storage is required. What is the processor? What is the memory? We really don't get into that. The first and the most important question for customer is that is the solution meeting my business outcome? Is the solution delivering the performance that I need? And for that, I would be consuming some compute, storage, memory, network, which is fine. Is it sufficient enough to deliver the workloads and the applications that I would be running? So we have moved out from owning to consuming. The second important part, we have moved out from managing platforms. Earlier, there was a lot of, I would say, complexity in managing multiple platforms, hardware, software, which used to operate in silos, right? Every other organization, take a big enterprise, they used to have their ERP, CRM, HR applications, multiple other customer-facing applications, internal payroll, right? They were running on different platforms. Managing them used to be a nightmare, but we had no other option. Right now, we are talking about managing services. We are literally not bothered on what exactly the platform is. We have gone a step above, and we are really concerned about what is that I can deliver as a service to my internal consumers, which would be a line of business, or to your set of customers. So we have moved out from managing platform to managing services. And last but not the least, it's very important, we have moved out from expansion or scale up to, I would say, scale out. We have moved out from expansion of legacy platforms to modernizing workloads. To give an example, earlier we had applications which were monolithic and legacy in nature. Right now we talk about microservices. We are talking about re-architecting the entire data center. We are talking about re-platform. We are talking about refactoring applications. We are trying to move from monolithic to microservices, and that is where technologies like containers come into play. So these are the three changes which have happened over the last, I would say, 15, 20 years, and it has happened for the good. And because of these changes, hybrid cloud has become so much acceptable in the modern workplace that we talk about today. The other important point which I wanted to mention is that with the advent of IoT, with the advent of analytics, with the advent of edge computing, I think the way data flows, consumed, has completely changed. What are the reasons? Earlier, if you look at the way we used to operate, everything and everywhere that data used to be generated had to come to the data center, your core data center, and then data used to be processed, and there was a lot of analytics which used to run to get meaningful insight out of that data. What people understood at a later point of time is that it's really cumbersome, it's costly, and it's an overburden on your bandwidth, which anyway was costly. So people started talking about how about analyzing data at the edge and giving real-time meaningful insights at the edge itself, rather than bringing the data all the way to the core. So that's the concept of core to edge to cloud. We are talking about autonomous cars. We are talking about a lot of data that's floating around. The data is meaningful if we are able to give real-time insight to our customers, to the line of business. And data needs to be analyzed at the location where it is closest to. It could be your core, it could be your edge, it could be your cloud. So this is another important shift that has happened in the industry in the last 5 years. So to sum it up, I feel that hybrid infrastructure is the new reality, and that's what has come out in most of the discussion that we are having with the CXOs of today. And it's I would say, a healthy mix of traditional IT, virtual and automated HCI hyperconverged infrastructure appliances, private clouds, which are on-premise, which you build and consume. And then you have managed and public clouds, which are purely on a consumption or pay-as-you-use basis. Now we'll jump into cloud strategy. And I guess when we decide or when we embark on this cloud strategy, there are multiple factors that we need to talk about. The first is obviously, what is the need of a cloud strategy? What are the complexities involved? What should be the approach, right? And then what? How do you put that into place? What is the execution mechanism? First, what's the need? I think the biggest need is obviously to contain cost and create outcomes. In the last 6 months, I think we have gone through the toughest time of our life. It's not only on a personal front, I think it's on a professional front as well. Every business organization was striving to sustain the business, to retain customers, and to sort of come out of this uncertainty. And that is where I think people were talking about efficiency, reducing the overall investment, manage and mitigate risk, do whatever is possible with whatever is there at hand. So multiple, I would say, decisions were taken in every other business organization across industry verticals to contain cost and to create meaningful business outcomes. And how do we do that? We do that by continuously creating and delivering new services which make sense to customers. Something which doesn't make sense to your customers has no meaning. We manage and mitigate risk. And it is more important, especially during the uncertainty. We really don't know how the economy is going to shape up in the next 6 months. So it becomes very, very important to manage and mitigate risk. Provide real-time insight and understanding. And again, this is linked to the previous 2 points I mentioned. The better the insight I have about my customer behavior, the better I would be able to forecast my business decision. The better I would be able to reduce the risk. And finally, align service performance to business demands. Now, the problem is that while hybrid cloud is something which is a reality, people talk about it, it's not that easy to deploy, or it's not that easy to strategize the way about it. Multiple complexities are there, right? The problem is that as of date, customers are running multiple applications and workloads. You run business intelligence, analytics, CRM, VDI, ERP, DevOps, containers. So multiple workloads, okay? The problem with the customer is, what is the right place for placement of these workloads? Is it cloud? Is it on-premise? Is it private cloud? Is it multi-cloud? How do I move out the instances? Is it too complex to manage? So I've listed a few questions which often come as we discuss with our customers. First is, what's the fastest path of migration? Because every customer doesn't want disruption to the business. In the process of moving to a hybrid cloud, if there is a disruption, it makes no sense to a customer. Which are the first movers? Which application are good candidates for private cloud and which are good candidates for public cloud? What's the confidence that you have? Do you think that this decision of yours will result in tangible business outcome? And finally, how ready are your applications? These are few of the questions. There are multiple other questions which goes a long way in deciding whether you are ready to move on a hybrid cloud journey or not. And as I said, I've mentioned a few sort of applications and workloads. And The important part is, where do I place them? That will define your hybrid cloud strategy, number one, and how successful are you in your hybrid cloud strategy, number two. The other problem is, as I said during the poll, that no single customer is same. And because we operate in multiple industry verticals, the consumption pattern, the mix of public, private, and on-premise traditional infrastructure will also change with time and with industry. Here's an example. This graph was prepared, or this representation was prepared from a McKinsey and IDC workload market share survey. And as you can clearly see, that not every industry vertical is same. All are different, and so are the pattern and ways of consumption. A banking industry, because of seasonality, might be a bit more dependent on a public cloud. If you look at a utility vertical or a healthcare, they might not be. Healthcare in specific have more concerns in terms of data regulation and security and compliance. They might not want to move data and application onto a public cloud. They would rather have it on-premise on a private cloud. So as a customer, as a business organization, you need to decide what is the right mix that is good or that is optimized for that industry vertical. Let's jump to what is the right path in defining the right mix of hybrid cloud. And as I said,
and before we get there, we'll take a quick pause here and just jump on to the next poll question for our audience. I'm sure the presentation so far has been so informative, because the entire hybrid cloud concept, there are so many moving parts to it that I think we've just probably touched the tip of the iceberg, and it's not a concept that we can just cover in 1 hour. But I think the view that we have gotten so far is extremely I would say I have definitely gained a lot of insights through this. So at this point, I will be launching a poll for our audience to again get a sense of the sentiments that we are seeing over here. And so the poll question should be on your screen now. The question says, what do you think is the right mix for your organization's hybrid cloud journey? Majority on public cloud, majority on private cloud, fair mix of both, or only public or only private? Okay. We're seeing some active participation happening on this question. Awesome. I would rather say that I'm not very surprised seeing the response here, but we'll come to that. Maybe it changes. We'll just give it another 10 seconds. 60% voting has already happened. May I request everyone else to kindly cast their vote? What do they think is the right mix for their organization? Okay, cool. So I think, I'll just end the poll now. And I'll share the results. Like I said, not surprised. People want a balance. Fair mix of both is what gets the maximum voting, followed by 25% saying majority on public, then near 9% saying majority on private, and just a very negligible percentage saying only public or only private. Do you have any comments on that?
No, I think it's absolutely in line with what we are currently discussing. And we understand that every business organization have realized that the way to cloud is hybrid. And it's not a destination, it's more of a journey. And I'm glad that majority of the organizations think the way that most industry analysts and most other service providers are thinking. So, it's nice to hear from veterans who are attending this session. I think it's absolutely in line with the current industry standards.
That's great. At this point, I'll before you proceed, there are a few questions that I see, and I'll probably want to take up just one question at this point. Uh,
Yeah, sure.
yeah. So, one second. Okay. There's a question from Nishant Sharma saying, "What's the strategy around preventing high CPU and disk size utilization in app and DB server?" Okay, very, very specific, I think. In app and DB servers, in Azure connectivity, that's a major challenge. How do you identify these CPU high disk utilization and resolve them then and there? Need to understand the feasibility about the same. Do you think it would be a valid question to take up now?
I think it needs a lot more understanding because
Yeah, I thought so.
we need
Yeah.
to, we need to understand the environment because there could be multiple factors because of which your database and application might not be performing to the way you would have wanted it to be. So that would need a different, I would say, insight on what exactly the current infrastructure is and how you are connected to Azure cloud, what all services you are using, what is the instances that you are using. So I guess uh, I would need a little bit more information to sort of discuss this. Maybe
Yes.
we can take this up at a later point of time.
Yes. Nishant, your question is nice, very nice, but very, very specific. And of course, there is a lot more deliberation that is required over there. So we'll just park this for now. I will just address one more question at this point, and then we can start on. There is a question I think we've addressed it partially on, it could be a good reiteration, but what challenges should organizations be aware of while adopting a hybrid cloud strategy?
Okay. So I think we will cover that in our subsequent slide. So if
Okay.
that doesn't answer, maybe we can take this question at the end of the session. I have
Sure.
that covered in my subsequent slide.
Valid. So let's take it up now. I will go behind the curtains again. Manindra, over to you.
Thanks. Okay. So let's come back. Yeah. So we will have to rush because I guess we are running short of time. So what I've done is, I have listed down 8 points that are important for customers to define the path of right mix of hybrid cloud. Okay. And if you look at, I've not talked about infrastructure. Being a person from infrastructure background all through my career, I feel that infrastructure or platform is something which is incidental. What customers need to talk about or what business organizations need to worry is more about application and data. And the path to defining right mix talks about an application and data-led approach, right? First, retire. What does this mean? You determine applications which are no longer needed and decommission them. There's no point running something which is a sort of hogging your data center and creating unnecessary burden on your data center. Retire those applications, decommission them. Next, retain. Identify applications which are not good for clouds, which are not good candidate for cloud. There's no point moving them to cloud. They're not cloud-ready application. They are legacy application. Retain them on-premise running on your data center. They would give you a far better total cost of ownership as compared to moving them on public cloud. Right? This is one of the very common mistakes that organizations do, wherein they believe that lift and shift of every application and workload to public cloud solves their purpose, which is not really the case. The third is replace. Right? If you're running an application which is custom built and there's a lot of bugs and you would want to upgrade, there's a lot of investment. If it is an in-house application, what we suggest to our customers is it's always better to switch to a SaaS or commercial off-the-shelf software applications which can meet your needs. The reason being, you get rid of the ownership of the software, the version upgrade, the bugs and the troubleshooting that come in with your in-house application. Obviously, the COTS application or the SaaS that we talk about needs to meet your in-house application requirements that you have developed homegrown. Rehost. Decide where your application and data gives you the best price to performance and accordingly move instances on-premise, private cloud, public cloud. Replatform. For applications and workloads which need minor modifications, right? You might want to re-platform them. For example, you were on a traditional legacy architecture. Look at if they can be moved to a private cloud on a hyper-converged infrastructure. HCI is something which we talk about day in, day out. Check if software-defined infrastructure can do the job with a minor modification. Refactor. I think this is the most difficult and the cumbersome job that's involved, and also it's pretty expensive. But in case you are really wanting to adopt hybrid cloud journey, I think refactoring application will be a part of your journey in some way or the other. And it involves major modifications. So out here, you would want to move out from monolithic to microservices, especially if you're looking at containerization. Then seventh, reimagine. Rethink how new applications can leverage hybrid cloud strategy. Define applications which can run anywhere, everywhere. It should not be, limited to a private, on-premise, on public. So there are application instances which run fairly well on public cloud, doesn't run well on premise, and vice versa. Actually, the opposite part is true, which means that many applications run fantastic on private cloud or on premise, doesn't perform the same way it should have been on a public cloud. You need to think, what are the modifications that I need to make in that application? Do I need to decouple the application in such a way that it's cloud ready, it's cloud native? And finally, resonate. And that's where I think we are working towards. The idea of us as a part of being a important, I would say, contributor to our business organization is to create, I would say, strategies which brings meaningful business outcomes. Define a strategy that has meaning and sense to the line of business, to your set of customers. And as I said, being an application and data-led approach, three things you need to consider: infrastructure, application lifecycle, and architecture models. In terms of infrastructure, it should be 100% software defined. We talk about hyperconverged infrastructure. Choose the software defined infrastructure of your choice and deploy your on-premise and hybrid cloud. Bring in automation, bring in cloud orchestration, bring in chargeback, showback. Talk about an efficient application lifecycle management, where it's not only agile, so that you develop, you track, you accept, you release, get feedback, review, and then again accept and release. And finally, the architecture models. Define architecture which is scale out, scale up, supports features like auto scaling, application blueprint, workflow, chargeback, showback. If your hybrid cloud strategy includes the three attributes which I just mentioned here, I think more or less you are covered. The next important portion is, is to define the service. Define your business needs, your interconnections, what are your delivery channels, what are your security and compliance and regulations that you need to meet while embarking on this journey, and finally your operation model. Define the fabric. We talk about network virtualization, storage virtualization, server virtualization. So it's more to do with the infrastructure. Define the infrastructure which is scalable, which is agile. If you're talking about a hybrid cloud, if you're talking about, private cloud, it's always better to develop your private cloud on a hyperconverged infrastructure, because HCI gives you that scale out platform on top of which you can add multiple software and get that same cloud-like experience which you would have got had you moved to public cloud. Then we talk about the service architecture. What you need to understand is, what are the services that you need to consume? Is it simple infrastructure as a service? Or you want to move a bit higher and evaluate platform as a service? Software as a service, anyway, we used to, we consume in a day-to-day life. Finally, manage consumption. I think this is very, very important. We all know that while public cloud is perceived to be cheap, it's not actually that. It's a free-flowing tap, right? And there have been horror stories of customers who have run into lakhs of rupees of bills because they were not able to manage their consumption in public cloud. You need to create a very, very fine balance between instances running on public cloud and private cloud. And for that, you need sophisticated yet simplified management. You need simplified self-service catalog. you need to have role-based access control. You need to define what are the parameters because of which my cost should be within this limit. I should not exceed this. And finally, operate. You need to have a lot of insight on your application instances, security, protection, availability, and recovery. And I think it all finally boils down to how well you sort of do homework and sort of prepare a blueprint before you actually put that into execution. And all this will help you define that blueprint exactly in a more informed manner. Before we almost come to an end of the session, I'll spend some time on a few sample architectures. And these are architectures which have been deployed across some of our customers who are harnessing its benefits to deliver their hybrid cloud strategy to their internal stakeholders as well as their own customers. So this is a very simple example of a hybrid cloud, right? What you see at the left-hand corner, bottom corner is nothing but your Azure stack, or it could be an AWS managed infrastructure, right? Which is deployed on-premise, but you still avail the cloud services. You have something deployed at the edge, which could be some edge appliances which are available across multiple OEM vendors. And through AWS IoT or GCP IoT, you can actually collect data, put it on the cloud, analyze that could give you real-time insight. The public cloud, which could be AWS or Google or Azure or Alibaba, in turn, connects to your on-premise data center for multiple services that you would want to avail by going this hybrid cloud way. What could be those services? Let me give you a few examples. Just a minute. I will straight away jump to, yeah. Right. So this is how few of the services I have listed. And these are, again, real world scenarios where we have deployed this with the customer. So for example, if you are a VMware customer, you are a VMware fanboy, I think you can run instances on premise, and there could be multiple instances which you could run on public cloud. Let me give you a very classic example. You have 100 virtual machines, and those could be a mix and match of application, database, and web. Out of that, you need to move 10 critical virtual machines as a part of your disaster recovery mechanism. We have this concept called VMware on AWS, VMware on Azure, VMware on Google, wherein you can just lift and shift those instances and move it onto a public cloud. What that gives you a benefit is you need not refactor your application, because what you're doing is you're providing the same similar platform, the same environment to your instances, whether on premise or public cloud. Take an example of Microsoft Azure. ThinkAgile MX is a Azure Stack HCI platform which is deployed on premise. And if you want to have a backup mechanism in place, you can actually use Azure Site Recovery and Azure Backup to back up some of the instances onto a public cloud, which is Microsoft Azure in this case. So instead of going and putting in a big investment around setting up a disaster recovery of your own, instead of looking at a good amount of investment on setting up a backup service on premise, it's a good idea to put those instances, back them onto a public cloud. I'll not go into further details. I just gave you 2 examples because this itself will take almost an hour to get into each and every detail on how it is done, what are the benefits. Maybe we can have it in the next series of sessions when we have it probably in the next month. Okay. Now coming to the final big question, that is hybrid cloud right for you? We started the session that we'll find the right mix. How do we find the right mix? I think what are the key takeaways from the session? We need to find the right mix. First is we need to look at a scalable infrastructure on premise, which should have ability to burst on demand, which should be able to seamlessly orchestrate, connect to your public cloud. We need dedicated on-premise applications, the legacy monolithic applications, with remote applications, cloud native applications, cloud ready applications, which can be seamlessly connected to your on-premise data center. We should have a robust security and compliance mechanism with an option to access easily from anywhere, from any device. There should be an option of controlled resource provisioning. Why? Because it all relates to cost optimization. But there should be business agility and responsiveness. And finally, we need to have predictable cost. That's very important. We need to have predictable cost with an option of pay-per-use. Does your mix of hybrid cloud meet this 5 parameters or points that we just talked about? If yes, you have possibly found out the right recipe or the right mix. And finally, this is my last slide. The right mix is about balance. We as customers, we as consultant, we as OEM, we need to tell our customers that you need to balance between cost, performance, and there could be a few other parameters. What I've listed out here is a few workload or use cases and which are good candidates for private cloud and which are good candidates for public cloud. And these are not something which we have just created out of our whim and fancy. This is after a sort of massive experience that we have gathered working with some of the largest industries across multiple verticals. Monolithic and legacy application, talk about CRM, talk about SAP HANA. I think very good candidate for private cloud. You'll never get that same level of performance, more so at the same cost on a public cloud. Seasonal workloads, classic example where customers need to move to public cloud. Public cloud is something where people need to use that for seasonality. There is a spike of 300%. No way a data center can handle that amount of load. And no way does it make sense for a business to have that level of buffer, which is 300 times, knowing that it will be used maybe once or twice in a month. That is where I think public cloud makes sense. Analytics. While people used to do analytics on-premise, public cloud makes a lot of sense because analytics is something which we not do often. We create a data set, we put it into a data warehousing, do a ETL, and then maybe move to a public cloud, unless and until obviously that data is of utmost secure and there is some compliance. We have seen a lot of customers doing analytics on cloud. Backup. If you have a robust backup on-premise, nothing like it. If you don't, and if you're not looking at a huge backup, data, public cloud could be a good option. Disaster recovery. Again, if you're looking at multi-site DR, public cloud could be one of them. Near DR could be on-site, public DR, the far DR could be on a public cloud. That gives you the highest level of availability and uptime. If you're talking about control, compliance, regulation, governance, you have no other option other than putting your data on a private cloud on-premise. Organizations who are representing, let's say, pharma, banking, government, PSUs, they are sort of regulated. There are multiple compliances. They are subject to audit. HIPAA, high-tech are something which we often talk about in the pharma industry. They would not want data to move out of their on-premise onto a public cloud. Private cloud is a fantastic option to go ahead with. DevOps, containers. Customers can have a very, very healthy mix of private and public cloud because containers is something, for example, Kubernetes. You can have it on-premise, you can have it on Google Cloud and manage it using a one single platform. So it's a very decent and classic example of how customers can leverage hybrid cloud to get best of both the world. So I think I've come to the end of the session. I strongly believe that I was able to sort of give some insight and some information. Again, hybrid cloud is a pretty vast topic and we can keep on talking for almost half a day. But whatever we could figure out in this 45 minutes, I think we have put up in this slide. So that's all from my side. I'm open to any question and answers. Over to you, Shubhra. Thanks a lot for your patient
Thank you.
hearing.
Thank you, Manindra. This was definitely extremely in depth. And like you said, the subject is not something that we can just cover completely in an hour. But I think whatever has been covered, that's been very, very informational. There are a few questions that I see here and a couple of hand raises too. We'll just see how much we can take up in the next 5 minutes or so. Um, there is a question from Amit Arora asking, can you throw more light on how does hybrid solution help you manage your seasonality of workloads better without impacting operational efficiency and yet making it cost effective?
Okay, I think it's a pretty good question because, as I said, in fact, I covered that in my slide. That take an example of insurance sector. Okay, uh, life insurance corporation. By the way, I think life insurance corporation is actually running a hybrid cloud to serve customers like you and me. So examine, take an example of Life Insurance Corporation of India, right? What we have understood from LIC is that 70% of their business, which is obviously payment of premium, happens in the last quarter of the financial year, which is January, February, March. And out of that 70%, 90% happens in March. So imagine the amount of workload, of pressure, imagine the amount of seasonality and spike that an organization like LIC experiences at the end of the quarter, at the end of a month. Do you think it makes sense? And they experience seasonality and spikes, which could be as high as 100 times. Okay, we are talking about 130 crores of population who are dependent on LIC for their premium. So massive, massive pressure on the infrastructure. That is where I think public cloud comes into play. You create a base platform which takes care of your predictable workloads. And then during seasonality, you subscribe to public cloud services. Once you are done and dusted with this immense spike that happens in the last 3 months, you can just unsubscribe to those services and it's business as usual. What you have done is you have not only optimized your cost and operation, you have given a phenomenal customer experience during this last 3 months. Imagine a customer, for me, let's say, I want to, usually I'm late at submitting my income tax, paying premium. It's 31st of March. That's the deadline I need to submit a premium on Life Insurance Corporation portal. I go there and I find that the site is not responsive at all. Imagine my irritation and anger and anguish. So yes, hybrid cloud actually plays a very, very important role, both in delivering a superior customer experience and in the process, delivering cost optimization. Good question. Thanks.
Wonderful. We have a couple of hand raises, so probably I'll go step by step here. So Siddharth, I am unmuting you from my end. You are now self-muted. Would you want to ask your question? You're self-muted. Okay. Then I'll go to the next person here. We have Ashwini Pawar. He's also sent in a question on chat, but Ashwini, would you want to take up the question yourself? You're right now self-muted. All right. So I think his question has also been very specific in terms of what he's put up in the chat window. What is the price difference between AWS and IBM hybrid cloud for VM?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Shubhra?
What is the price difference between AWS and IBM hybrid cloud for VM? He's also sent a message saying, sorry, his mic is not working properly, so he's not being able to.
So again, as I said, price and commercials are something which is completely dependent on the service that you want to avail. So it's a very generic question. So we would need further details to exactly answer. Okay. Now, as I said, since you talked about commercial, I think this is again a very generic question that I hear from the customer, that is public cloud expensive, cheap, is it at par with private cloud? I'll give you a very good analogy. Let's say you have a car of your own. You have bought a car, right? You have paid upfront payment and you're using it at your convenience. There's another option wherein you lease a car, or let's say you avail Uber every day, right? 365 days in a year, if you are using, let's say, once or twice in a month, once or twice in a week to be precise, and Uber on an Ola, that will work out to be cheap for you. No point in having your own car. If you're going in a Ola and Uber 365 days a year, it's always going to be expensive than having your own car. Apart from the convenience and the security that you have in your own car as compared to traveling on an Ola Uber, right? So it's not about commercials, it's about placing the right instance and availing the right services on-premise and public cloud. If you can share the instances and the services that you want to avail on a public cloud and private cloud, we can possibly give you some idea on the commercial.
Sure. So we are past the scheduled time and we still have few questions unanswered, but unfortunately due to the paucity of time right now, we will have to end the session. However, I know there must be some very, very relevant questions that you all must be having that you want to ask. We have an ID called webinar@denave.com. I'll repeat that for you. It's webinar@denave.com, simple ID, but something that we access very, very actively. If there are any questions that you would still want to answer, please, just drop in a line to us on that ID, and we are all ears, and we'll be happy to also pass it on to Manindra for his response there. So, like I said, the entire webinar is also being right now live streamed on Facebook. It will also be available on our YouTube channel. So in case you want to access the content anytime, please feel free to drop in and it will also, the link will also be emailed to you. Manindra, thanks a lot for taking out this one precious hour for us. I think this has been extremely useful for us as well as the audience here. So thanks for your time. And somehow I think your camera is posing some issues. I can't see you.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So what's the problem? But thanks a lot, Shubhra, for having me here. It was glad, and a lot of good questions. I think a lot of insight came out through those two polls that we had. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay home. Stay safe. Thanks a ton for joining us today.